Hi everyone, it's 9 o'clock on a Thursday night and you're live with the Handicap Rugby Chat That Matters. Well, we've got Super Rugby Australia to talk about. We've got Super Rugby in New Zealand, although it looks as though one of those games at least may not be taking place. But the good news as well is we've got the Northern Hemisphere Rugby starting up. It is starting up behind closed doors, but we've got the Gallagher Premiership. And when I put a little note on the group to say who's keen to come on the show, I can tell you that one man was very keen because he's been waiting for the Northern Hemisphere Rugby to start for quite a few weeks now. So let's start off at the top right of my screen. Thoughts on sports, Neil? Good to have you back on the show and you champing at the bit to get at the Northern Hemisphere game.
No, Brent, very, very excited to get stuck into some Northern Hemisphere rugby. I think it's also a bit of a bonus that there's quite a large SAFA contingent flying their trade up north, and I think there's quite a lot of value this week. So excited for a bit of a different perspective from the Aussie and New Zealand ruggers.
Excellent. Yeah, looking forward to your comments on the rugby up north. And another man I'm looking to welcome to the show now. Normally when I lose a bet to him, I pay it straight away, but I thought, stuff it. This week I'm going double or quits this time. He cleaned me out last time. I've had a lot of people message me and say, Oracle was right. That bookies had the wrong favourite, and you were spot on. You said the Waratahs should be favoured for the game. Goodness me, Gavin. They won 45-12 with the Reds scoring a late consolation try. But what really got to me was, of course, I didn't watch the game. I went out shopping with my house. I didn't want to see anything. And as I got home, I made the mistake of glancing at my phone, and I saw the messages from the Oracle, and I knew I was in big trouble.
Yeah, that's right. It was 17-0, then it was 24-0, then it was 31-0, and it was 38-0. In fact, they were scoring faster than I could type. It was ridiculous. I always mark a game by if they're beating time, and they got to 38 before 38 minutes. And as a lot of guys have pointed out on the show in the past, you get a big half. The next half is often the other way around, or vice versa. And as we saw, the second half did have a few points, but it had nothing like what the first half did. Brent, just to go back to what you were saying about the English rugby, well, should I say what Neil was saying, that there's a lot of South Africans playing. I think you also said that. I think it's about time us punters, that especially, I mean, I'm obviously talking about myself, but I'm sure a lot of people watching are starting to think about this. And, with the possibility of South African teams going up north, there's probably a lot of value out there. In fact, I'm pretty sure there is a lot of value out there. I've just never really looked for it. I've always been a Super Rugby or Curry Cup punter. Never really bothered going up there. But yeah, I think the time has come now where we've got to start looking at these games. There are a lot of South Africans playing in these teams. And I'm pretty sure there's a hell of a lot of value. We just got to find it.
Excellent. Well, we definitely will run through the Premiership games. Neil, just from your side last week, that was it the Waratahs Reds game? I know I was unders on points there as well. I couldn't believe when I saw the conditions. I thought this is going to be a typical Australian knock-on festival. We're just gonna have about 35 points in the game, and the Waratahs just turned it on.
No, Brent, there was the upsetting thing. There was mountains of rain in Sydney on Friday and Saturday morning. Even if I gotten a quote at around 48.5, I still would have been very firm on the unders. I think even with sort of the Griffins border Bulldogs with Egan seconds on the whistle, to get a 53.5 quote was ludicrous. So I was very, very strong on that unders. And then obviously for James O'Connor to run in the 82nd minute, obviously broke the heart. So I thought I was very much in with a shot. I thought I was going to get burgled out of jail after that 38-point fast start, but it wasn't to be. But we move on to the weekend.
Yeah, let's move on to this weekend, and I'll start off with you here. We've got the first game. That is, of course, tomorrow morning, Friday morning. I'm using World Sports betting prices here, but you must obviously just quote from wherever you're betting. Neil, we got plus 8.5 now, this handicap. I actually handicapped this game in the double figures. I think I was 11.5, 12.5. So I must admit I'm leaning a little bit towards the Waratahs here.
No, Brent, I think the handicap's very well priced at the moment. I see that they're playing at the Cbus Super Stadium. So that's in Queensland, home of the Titans. It looks like quite a fast pitch. But I did see an early points line when it came out at 52.5. I thought that was golden. I also got a rule of thumb that if ever you get a 50 point total points line in an Australian derby, it's just the natural way is to go unders regardless of conditions. The conditions are looking quite nice, and Force have named a fairly sort of stable side with Kahui and Godwin in the centres. So I do like that. And an interesting thing is that I have been quite closely monitoring how the team performed straight after the bye, and I think it's 7 out of the 8 times that the team has covered the spread in fresh out of a bye, bullish on the force. I haven't placed anything as of yet. So if I was leaning on the handicap, I would definitely go force. And I think the best handicap you can get is about 9.5 at the moment.
Excellent. And the points line now is moved to about 49.5, 48, 49.5.
Yeah, I think you can still get 47.5. Yeah, 48, 47, yeah.
Yeah, I must say, I did like your post on the Good for the Game forum, the under 52.5. By the time I looked at it to write the preview actually for Good for the Game, it had moved down. So what I've gone for there is a bit of a speculative play, 11 to 20 points. Waratahs to win by 11 to 20, so somewhere in that range at 28 to 10. And as I said, Waratahs to win by 11 to 20, I saw a smile crack open over the Oracle's face. Oracle, just before I go to you, welcome to the guys who are watching the show live, whether it be on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. Please feel free to share your comments. And good to have Chris with us on the show as well. And Brendan, who I see is watching on YouTube, he reckons forced to win the game. And that leads nicely into Oracle. What do you say?
Oh, I was about to say that. And then I saw the conductor, and the conductor's form is pretty shocking at the moment. So I don't know what to do there. And I see Chris McGowan also came on saying he was on the Waratahs last week. Yeah, so well done if you were on the Waratahs last week. I know Brendan O'Connell was on them as well. I think you told me that, Brent. This is a tough one, eh? This is really a tough one. These are my two teams playing each other now. The first time they played, this was a double-digit handicap. I think it was around about 14 or 15. The game was in Sydney. I was on the force plus there. I was apprehensive. It just narrowly snuck in at the end. I think they lost by 13 or 14, and the handicap was 15. The plus
it was close in the end, but the force went 14-0 up, if I recall, Gav. It was close in the end, though. The Waratahs came back to win, I think, by 8 or 9 or something.
Yeah, I hear what Neil's saying about the the bar weekend. Look, I am on the force here. I'm not confident because it is. I'm actually split here, but I just got a feeling it just feels a little high at 8 or 9. I mean, you said you priced this up in the double digits. I would have probably gone about 5 or 6 here. I'm not strong. I see Nathan's come on saying he's strong on the Tars. I'm not strong on either of them. I am going to have a small go here on the force, but honestly, it's not confident.
And Neil, just to come back to you on this, the one thing that's hit me about the Australian game is the inconsistencies. I think we spoke about it last week as well. I mean, I watched the Waratahs lose 29-10 to the Rebels. They were absolutely useless in that game. And then they come out and they deliver the sort of performance that we saw last week against a Red side that the week before would look pretty unlucky to lose to the Brumbies in Canberra. And it's that inconsistency which maybe means the total points market's actually the way to play in the Australia games.
No, definitely, Brent. I think that obviously it's tempting to go for the sort of handicap plays when you think there's a bit of value about, especially if you're getting big handicaps on the likes of the force. But I mean, total points is definitely the way to go. I saw a stat midweek that this is the lowest in the last 10 years. This is the lowest tries in Australian rugby. So I think they're averaging like 5.1 tries a game, where in previous seasons have been sort of like in the 6s. So if you're getting 5.5 on average per game, and you're taking a strike on unders in that, you are going to be in the money. And just to add to that, I do see that the try line is out for the fourth game and sitting at about 6.5. So I do think an unders on that. The Force do like having a crack at 6. John Lance isn't the most creative 10 about, and they do have quite solid defense. So that should be quite a nice pair. It's not something that I'll be looking at myself just because I'm already on that 52.5.
Right, well, let's move on to the game then on Saturday morning, and that is going to be the Highlanders up against the Hurricanes. And Gavin, I'm going to start with you here. The Highlanders are plus 3.5 at this point on the handicap. I'm not too sure. Let me quickly look for you what I priced this one at for what it's worth. I priced this as plus 2.5 Highlanders, so it's within a point of my cap. I don't see anything obvious here. I'll leave my pick for the end, though. What do you think of this one?
I just want to, say one more thing on the Force game. This particular game is taking place in Queensland, as Neil pointed out. I've got to believe that the Force have been given the opportunity of choosing the ground here because they're the home team. I've got to believe that Queensland is more home to the Force by way of weather and conditions than it is for the Waratahs. So that's probably also plays into the handicap being a little bit lower than what it would have been. Considering that the last game was at least 7 or 8 points higher. So It's probably built in there. And yeah, the fact that the Force have chosen this, I think they have. I don't know for sure, but I've got a strong feeling that they chose this venue. Probably been playing up there for the past week or so. And yeah, I'm starting to like the Force a little bit more after thinking about it while we're chatting. This New Zealand game.
Before you go on, Gav, I just want to say, let's bookmark this as a potential bet. Because I'm leaning Waratahs, you strong on the Force. So, assuming we don't have any other major discrepancies throughout the show, then we can come back to this one at the end.
Brent, I'll also give you the opportunity. You can call any bet. Actually, don't worry about where I'm going. I've always had a thing that the loser can pick the next bet. It's I don't get to pick that many bets, so I don't mind.
I love it. Right, take us on to the next game. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks a lot. Take us on to the next game.
So this game's a dead rubber, Brent. It's a half dead rubber. The Hurricanes need to obviously overtake the Blues to get the advantage of the what do they call that game? The qualifier or whatever it is to get into the final against the Crusaders. So there's only one team.
Gav, there's no final in the New Zealand competition. So if you're basing your bets on that,
that's right. They've won already. So they all
have won it.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. That makes it 100% a dead rubber. I actually just thought it was a half a dead rubber, so I obviously didn't realise how the system worked. I'm not going to take a bet in this game. The obvious result seems to be the Hurricanes here. I don't know if this was a match for anything. I would have probably thought that the Hurricanes might have even been a -6 or -7. So it seems obvious to me that the Hurricanes have the value, but honestly, I'm not touching this game. I don't like dead rubbers. I think this is, Stevens just come on saying, thinks the Highlanders can upset them. Geez, anything can happen in this match. I'm not getting involved in this game.
Yeah, Stephen and Chris both going for the Highlanders. I must say, I hear your point on dead rubbers. In particular, I've often found that in cricket test matches, for example, when there's a dead rubber. But I do think one thing, a New Zealand derby, these sides, they always seem to throw everything at each other. And I'm interested to hear Neil's thoughts on this one. 3.5 points, Neil. Which way are you leaning?
Brent, this is a very tough one. Initially, I capped it at about a 4.5 point region, and in that sort of vicinity, I definitely was leaning the Landers on the plus. But I see that you can now almost get 1.5 handicap. I think I sort of bet X just due to the announcement that TJ Perenara is expecting the birth of his firstborn, so he's out for the game. So I think at those numbers, I think 1.5 for the Canes is good value. They're in cracking form. They won their last 5, upset the Satyrs in Christchurch. I think that is the right way to go, but no strike for me just yet. But a play I've been eyeing out is either team to win by 7 or less, and that also includes the draw at 19-10. And this has arrived in 9 of the last 10 games between the two sides. I think that if you're getting 19-10 at a bet like that and sort of a 6.5 point handicap either way, that's quite nice. So yeah, that's definitely a bet I would be looking at. And then just to add to it on the point side, this is definitely a game I was targeting for points. The zoo under the closed roof is it's just very conducive to points being scored, but I have been put off by that by seeing young Brendan Pickerel on the whistle. So if I can get sort of low 50s, maybe 51, 52.5, I'll definitely be looking at overs. But if I'm getting sort of mid 50s, then I'll stay after that.
Excellent. Well, welcome to Ben. He's green there on the Canes. That they've been the best side for the last month. But yeah, Perenara certainly is a big loss. It's something I'll have to think about. When you first said Perenara, I actually was thinking of Aaron Smith for some reason, and I thought, geez, I'm all over the Canes. But I mean, because I think if the Highlanders lost Smith, it would be huge. But I must say, I was leaning towards the Hurricanes there myself. But looking at all the support for the Highlanders, I might just take a bit of a watching brief on this one, Gavin, from a handicap point of view, and play the total points lines, what Neil is suggesting there, and have a look at what the points will be. Because I do enjoy watching those 9 o'clock games on a Saturday morning under the roof. Let's move on to the next game, though. Pity we don't have Couch Critic here with any try-scorer plays, but that's going to be a change of pace, let's put it that way, as we go from Highlanders, Hurricanes to Reds against the Rebels. And Neil, I'll start with you on this one. There's been quite a lot of money for the Reds from what I can pick up during the week. I handicapped this game as Reds -3.5, so not a lot of obvious value there for me, although I think this game opened almost a choice game with most bookmakers.
No, Brent, I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that GG opened with the Reds as the dogs in this game. I think right off last week, that was just a bad 80 minutes for everyone in Queensland. They're missing sort of Jordan Petawa, obviously with his father's passing. Christopher Aotearoa took a bit of a head knock, and then sort of Tate McDermott getting the splinters from the bench. So I think that they just didn't rock up on match day. Reg tend to struggle in sort of greasier conditions. But I think back home in Queensland, I reckon Brad Thorne would have had a big tongue lashing to his gents in the change room. So I think that the only way to go here is the Reds. I expect him to come out absolutely firing. And yeah, I think they're going to put the Rebels away. I have seen that there is sort of a bit of rain about in Queensland. So it obviously does sort of play into the Rebels' strengths, with Matsimo being quite a solid option at 12, distributing and communicating very well. And Nasarani was very, very solid in the West against the Brumbies. But I still think that with Tate McDermott back in the starting lineup, Reds also very weak in defence out wide with Hegarty, but he's back down to the bench. Jordan Petawa back in the side. Yeah, I'm very strong on the Reds here, Brent.
Excellent. Before we go to Gavin, Brendan, to see your question there about the COVID and the crowds under lockdown, and we'll talk about that when we get to the final New Zealand game. But Gav, let's go to you on this one. The Reds, who, let's just say they made you a good bit of money last week by playing so damn badly against the Waratahs. Where are you going on this one? You're opposing the Reds again?
Yeah, the Reds had 4 stages of mental letdown, or we'll call it mental lockdown for the moment last week. They got dished a 5th one when they got smashed. There's no ways they're going to win this game. They got the wrong favourite again, Brent. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on with punters back in the Reds team. I just don't know. Did they not watch the Rebels? I mean, this is the Rebels team that you said beat the Waratahs, then beat the Brumbies, and now you're telling me that the Reds are going to beat them. The final is going to be the Waratahs and the Rebels are probably going to win this tournament. I'm sorry, there's only one bet. This is the best bet by a country mile. The Rebels should have been favourite here. I cannot believe I'm getting over even money. I'm all over that. But again, it's Australia versus Australia. It's a very small bet, albeit the biggest one for the weekend. I'm very confident.
I'm not going to argue with you on that, because, I mean, the Reds, they burnt me last week. I'm not hopping on them. But just to go back to the point of the inconsistency, yes, the Rebels, incredible against the Waratahs, excellent last week against the Reds. In between those games, if I'm not mistaken, they drew to the Force. They won it in super time, 25-20. But that is Australian rugby for you. But okay, so this is your most confident bet of the weekend. I think I'm going to be leaning back towards the Waratahs bet there, quite frankly. But let's see what happens for our bet. But let's go on to Sunday morning then, Gav. I'm going to start with you. Obviously, there's a lot of doubt even at this point as to whether this game will take place because of the COVID-19 rearing its ugly head in Auckland again. But officially, as things stand now, they had sold 50,000 tickets for Eden Park. And this game opened up. Now, I actually handicapped this game plus 4.5 Blues, although admittedly already leaning towards the Blues. But that's where I thought the handicap would be. GG Gaming opened 4.5, but that Blues have been backed all the way through, obviously on the basis of the fact that this is a dead rubber for the Crusaders, probably more so than the Blues. I mean, the Blues can't win the tournament, but they've almost got a bit more to prove. And the Blues now minus 1.5 points, Gav. The question is, are punters overreacting to the fact that this is a dead rubber?
I think they absolutely are. I can't believe people are getting involved in this. But I'm also going to go back to, I don't know if you would know, you were part of the show, the Saturday morning super show on the Racing Channel 239. John, what is his name? Terry Payne, I think his name is.
Terry Payne, yes.
One day and they're going, New Zealand's playing South Africa today, and they're all talking about South Africa. And he goes, sorry, what did you say New Zealand's price was? And they reckon it's even money. He says, New Zealand are even money? And they said, yeah. He says, well, then I'm backing New Zealand. I mean, that's crazy. And in this case, I've got to say, if the Crusaders are 9-10 or 11-10 or even money, or they could be as much as 12-10 here. If you're going to have a bet on this game, that's the biggest price you're going to get the Crusaders this side of 2024, and probably the last time you saw this price since 20 whatever. I don't even know. It's a crazy price. It's a dead rubber. So and as you've quite confirmed now, there's no more tournament. They've already won the thing. I got to tell you, if you are going to have a bet on this game, you've got to take the Crusaders. That is an unbelievable price. Can't believe it. But I'm not touching it because it's a dead rubber. It's just a personal rule that I've got.
Right. Well, I'm just making a note to the guys who quite a couple of guys coming in here, including Neil himself, and saying, let's talk 500 Rand bets on the Reds-Rebels game. But let's come back to that at the end, because I see Brendan Vessels as well is also coming in, the conductor, saying he wouldn't mind a punt there. But Neil, let's go to you for this game. I think you were also, I'll tell you what I did on this game. I missed the 4.5, but I took 11 to 10. I took 11 to 10, which was the biggest price at the time at GG Gaming on the Blues to win. So I'm certainly hoping the game goes ahead, just because I really do fancy the Blues to finish the season strong. What have you done on this game?
No, Brent, at the 4.5 region, I was definitely firmly in the Blues camp. I did manage to get a bit of loot down with GG, so I'm quite happy with that. And I also took that in a double with Reds on the board, so I'm sitting quite nicely with those big prices that I got there. I think sort of at the current price, I think you can still sort of get the 2.5 region. It is quite tough to side with the Blues. I don't think in my punting existence I've ever seen the Crusaders as underdogs. So it's obviously fairly nerve-wracking to sort of go against them. If I had to, in all honesty, once again, very favoured to the side coming off the bye. If I had to lean, I would probably still go Blues on the -1.5. Just the teams coming off a bye have just looked a lot fresher, especially in these sort of grueling New Zealand derbies. Joe Moody and the Crusaders tight end, I just forget his name for the moment, both out for the weekend. Two crucial players, big front rankers. The Crusaders going to feel a bit of inexperience in the front row. There's a bit of talk of Richie Mwanga's firstborn also getting popped out this week, so he also might be unavailable. So I think with that news in mind, even if he might just Richie Mwanga, a bit of an unsettled mind as it is, I think Blues is definitely the right way to go. And I would still also look at either team to win by 7 or less at about 18 to 10. I think you can get it as. I thought that's also a cracking price. And if the game is still to go ahead in Auckland with a full crowd, I really, really like the Blues over 13.5 first half points at 1-1. I think that's a gift. And I think that has arrived in, I think, is it 5 out of the 6 Blues games this season? So, yeah.
Yeah, that I must say, I was also eyeing that. I was busy looking at the preview for Good for the Game, which I haven't posted yet, but I was eyeing out that Blues first half points at even money there. Brendan Vessel saying Richie Mwanga will be at his wife's side. Now, Richie Mwanga's wife must be wondering why she's suddenly getting all these South African followers on Twitter, because old conductor Brendan Vessels, he leaves no stone unturned. He's been following her on Twitter. He can't wait for her to say she's going into labour so that he can quickly get some more money on, because he knows Richie Mwanga's out. And that's the beauty of social media. So, Brendan, keep us informed with regard to how that's going. Stephen Marks just coming in as well and saying Ollie Jagger also out. So, yeah, going to be an interesting one. I think, for me, the best advice on this game, look, I'm on the Blues, and I've had a nice bet on the Blues there, so I am hoping that they play. But yeah, you've always got to be a little bit wary of a game which has nothing in it. But all the more reason I think that of the two sides, the Blues are going to come out smoking. So, Gav, this is another potential 500 Rand bet. We'll wrap up at the end which way we're going. You probably will lay me both.
Listen, Brent, I think Neil's also right there with his points bet on the Blues. I think this is the kind of game. These dead rubbers often become try-fests, and there's nothing to be held back. So it's very possible this game could get as much as 55 or 60. So going over individual points, if you like your team at 13.5, that does sound like a bit of a punt that you could have if you were not really trying to get involved in the results. I do see a lot of points in a game like this. Probably be a great game to watch. And as you said, 50,000 seats. I'm very interested to know what you were talking about with regards to the COVID, though, because I understood New Zealand was 120 days without any infections, and the border was still closed. What happened? I didn't even know anything about that.
Yeah, I don't know. A couple of days ago, they had 4 cases. A family of 4 tested positive. And they put Auckland, I think, is in level, which is it, level? I forget which way they do their level, but Auckland's got 1 level, and the rest of New Zealand are on another level. And Brendan Vessels was actually asking the question, and I think he was referencing the Highlanders Hurricanes game as to whether crowds would be allowed in that game. But so the Auckland game, just to tell you, Gav, at this stage, it may not even take place because of the breakout. I think they've had 13 cases now or something like that. They haven't yet traced the source. But Neil, just to bring you in, are you aware of the situation in the Highlanders game? If for example, the lockdown levels stay, would that have to be played behind closed doors, perhaps?
No, Brent, from my understanding that the Highlanders is expecting a packed zoo. Yeah, there's no risk at all of an empty stadium so far, which is obviously great news for viewers and punters alike.
Okay, interesting one. So, Gav, yeah, just something to bear in mind. But I mean, I don't see the game not taking place. Well, I'd be surprised if it didn't. But yeah, I'm just hoping there's 50,000 fans in there because it really will be an excellent game. But that's it as far as Super Rugby goes. We'll come back at the end of the show to cover best bets. And also there's a couple of wagers floating around in the live comments. And as Shane says here, and he's a big Oracle fan, I know, show no fear, Oracle. Take all those wagers. And I can see Oracle nodding his head. He's had enough money out of Couch Critic and myself over the last few weeks that he's sitting very pretty there. Thank you very much. But let's move on now and let's talk a little bit of Gallagher Premiership. And I just want to bring up, scrolling at the bottom, I'll just bring up the latest outright betting. Now, I didn't realize, Neil, that this tournament is actually continuing. I assumed they'd scrapped it and we're going to start a new season. But in actual fact, they continue. And here we got the betting. The Exeter Chiefs 5-6, Sale 7-2, Northampton Saints 6-1, the Bristol Bears 6-1, and you can get 14-1 and better the balance. So before we get into the games themselves, any thoughts on who's going to actually take the title?
Brent, I actually got quite lucky. I placed a couple of nice outright bets. I think it was in early Jan or Feb when the Saris were when the news sort of came out that they would be facing that sort of heavy points deduction. So I think I took the Chiefs at about 11-10, and I also took the Sale Sharks. I think it was about 11-2, so sort of about 5.5 there. So I'm sitting quite nice with the two favorites there. I think a sort of a dark horse could be the Bristol Bears, but unlikely with the sort of run-in with the fixtures. So I think definitely still at Exeter Chiefs, you can sort of get 8-10. I still think that's probably definitely the way to go with this one.
Excellent. Well, Gav, I know you haven't really studied up on the Northern Hemisphere, and aside from a bit of reading here or there, I haven't either. So I'm going to just chat to Neil about this, but if you have any comments or thoughts, just raise your hand on this, but I'll stick with Neil for these bets. Neil, we got the first bet here. It's Harlequins against Sale. We got Harlequins plus 5.5. They are playing at home. As Southpaw pointed out on the Good for the Game forum, these are behind closed doors, so that probably negates a little bit of the home ground factor. And I think he originally came in at, I can't remember if he was plus or minus 2.5 on Sale, but the money's really come for them here. They're 5.5 point favourites.
No, Brent, I think if any South African seen the Sale Sharks team, they could be forgiven for mistaking it for the Tull Sharks. I think is a very strong SAFA contingent there, and I think they're still missing Corbett Spisa. So he would, in my opinion, still slot into that 23. They got a lot of muscle up front. It's got Faf de Klerk and Rob de Pree. I'm not the biggest Rob de Pree fan, but he does suit the Northern Hemisphere conditions as a sort of a ball carrying 10 if there was such a thing, and he's a bit of a sharpshooter off the tee. So I think Sale Sharks is definitely the right way to go. I was lucky enough to get it 2.5 with Sunbet, and I think I took a bit more of 3.5. I was in firm dialogue with Sun of the Punt this week, and yeah, we're very much aligned with all of our players there. I know they're also very strong on the Sale minus 3.5. And just looking at the points market, I see that Bet365 which has come out of the points market for that game, and it is a lot of rain predicted at the Twickenham Stoop tomorrow night. So a player I quite like is the Quins under 2.5 tries in the game. I think you can get that at about 9-10. And just to add a bit of a statistical know-how to that, Sale have been the best defensive team in the Premiership, and they've only conceded on average 15 points a game. So I think that is a good runner. So.
Excellent. Well, let's move on to the next game then. It's Worcester against Gloucester. Here we got 3.5 points. And I saw a comment on this game I'll bring up here. Joey Wallace saying Christopher Ridley refs the Worcester v Gloucester. He's a big overs ref. Take overs if over 45 or above. And interesting because I know like our own Henrik Swart is a big referee watcher when it comes to overs. And as Neil, you are as well. What are your thoughts on this game?
No, Brent, I actually had similar thoughts on that. I actually know Chris Ridley as being quite a notorious overs ref, but the only problem is that the Worcester Warriors are probably one of the biggest unders teams in Europe, so that is probably something I will stay away from. I would expect a point line of about 44, 45.5. If I could probably get a nice Gloucester overs, maybe at about 26.5, I might be interested, but it's generally quite a tricky game to call. I think it's still, the handicap hasn't moved much. It's still sitting at about 2.5, 3.5. If I was forced to make a play, I probably would be leaning Gloucester on the minus, but not with a lot of confidence.
Just quickly to break for a second, Henrik saying only 100 people will be allowed in the stadium on current restrictions in Dunedin. So if the restrictions aren't lifted, I think it's Friday night they're looking at it. That will be the case. And Henrik, I share your concern that there's a good chance the Auckland game won't go ahead. And my personal view on it is it's a massive overreaction, but that's just my thoughts on that particular matter. Let's stick to the European rugby. And I know, Neil, that there's been a lot of money in this game. Exeter minus 16.5, Leicester plus 16.5. I think you can get 17.5. There was 18.5 early in the week, and the majority of the Good for the Game forum have come down on the side of the Leicester Tigers here, citing management change.
No, Brent, the Chiefs at Sandy Park are usually a complete beast. If this was played in front of full crowds, I'd be very, very wary, especially with the Tigers having lost, I think it's upward of 20 first team members, and obviously only replaced a couple. So I think that's where the bookies are coming out of that line. But I think the Tigers are sort of quietly brewing in the corner. They've recruited Aled Walters, who was the Welsh strength and conditioning coach who came in to help the Box in the World Cup, and he did a superb job. And they've also got Steve Borthwick as head coach of the Tigers, and I also see that they've signed Amani Nandola, so he's obviously quite a threat out wide. And probably one of my favorite players in the Premiership is Jordan Telfer, who's going to pack down on the side of the scrum, and he sort of offers 2 to 3 players work rate, and he's just a fantastic player. So I think when you're getting a double try head start on the Leicester Tigers in front of no crowd, I think it's no brainer to go on the Tigers. I managed to get 17.5, but I'll still be more than happy to take 16.5.
They'll certainly be going into a multiple tomorrow in the Good for the Game newsletter. So if you haven't subscribed to our free newsletter, which comes out on a Friday, go down below the show. There is a link there in the subscription box. Click it and you'll get our mail on Friday mornings. Normally the best bet on this show. And quite often it's unanimous. Everybody likes the same thing. Other nights, I spend all night wondering what to go with. Unfortunately, last week hit the Hurricanes. I think, Neil, you gave us the bet under 52.5 points in the Hurricanes game. And I eventually tipped it at 50.5. And that arrived, although the weather conditions didn't really come the way we thought. So it was a bit of a nervous one after a low-scoring first half, but it was a good call nonetheless. But let's go on to the next game. Bath minus 10.5 against the London Irish.
No, Brent, this is probably the only game where I've got absolutely no feel for this. London Irish, they're quite a tough side to call. They're sort of like the Western Force that you sort of get a nice point start in them every game. The bookies don't really like them, but once again, they're generally quite a strong performing side at home, a couple of no names in the back. So yeah, this is, if there was one game I was to leave alone in the Premiership, this is it. If I was really pushed and someone was squeezing me for a bet, I probably would lean Irish on the minus. I just expect Bath to be a bit rusty after the restart.
Right, and let's move on then to the Northampton Saints up against the Wasps. Northampton here, minus 6.5 points.
No, Brent, if there's one team that the Son of the Punt boys love going on the minus, and that's for the Saints at Franklin's Gardens. I think they also managed to get on the 4.5. I was with them on that, and I also took some more of the 5.5. I'm not a big Wasps fan at all. I think that the bookies week in, week out overrate them. They're a poor side, poorly coached. I'm not a big fan of Sipawanga in the Northern Hemisphere. I loved him when he was down south, but in the Northern Hemisphere, him and Feki Toda, they just don't do it for me in the sort of wet conditions. So I think if there's one way to go, it is definitely Northampton on the minus. 6.5 is just an interesting predicament because it's obviously quite close to a converted tries. I was a lot happier with 4.5, 5.5. A player I would be looking at is if I can get around 26.5 Northampton points. It's definitely a player I'd be looking at going overs on Saints points there.
Shout out there to Paul Scumby watching on Facebook saying he likes the Johnny Bravo look of mine. They haven't had a haircut since the start of lockdown, and I'm not having my haircut till I'm under 120 kilos, everyone. So I can tell you I'm getting there, but it's going to be probably still a little bit of a while. That takes us to the end then, Neil, of the European games. So maybe just wrap up for us. What would your best bet be in Europe before we talk Super Rugby?
Sure, it's a bit of a tough one because a couple of those prices aren't available. I'd say my best bet was Sale minus 2.5. But what's still available, I'll still be happy to take Sale minus 5.5 as my best bet, or either that or an under on Quinn's points or tries.
Excellent. Well, whatever you say, it looks like Hendrik Swart's going to be following you there, and Chris reckons Saints all day long. That brings us to the end of the European rugby. Of course, a good sign. It means we're getting back into more rugby. We're going to see more and more rugby coming up over the next few weeks. Pro 14, I think, starts next weekend. So looking forward to that as well. And plenty to talk about. But let's go back then to our best bets of the weekends, gentlemen. In fact, before we get that, let's establish what money is changing hands amongst the panel and, if necessary, amongst some of the guests as well. Let's go Reds Rebels. I did see you, Neil, post. You wouldn't mind an even 500 with the Oracle there. and I think our good man, the conductor, as well. So if I go back to that game and see what the line was, it was 1.5. No, it was Reds 2.5. So you guys are happy to take, Neil, you happy to take the -2.5?
I was hoping for an evens on the outright, but yeah, 2.5 I'm in, yeah.
Gav, what are you willing to lay an outright bet there? So
no problem.
Okay, so even 500 on the outright draw, no bet?
No, 2.5 you're talking about.
Oh, 2.5. Okay, you happy with that, Neil?
I'll do 2 Tano bets, no problem.
2 Tano bet, 2 points Tano bet. You happy with that, Neil?
Yeah, that's perfect, yeah.
Okay, and then conductor can just confirm. I don't know if you're in the market for.
You can have some as well, no problem. You can also have if you want.
Okay, so Brendan, just to be clear, that you've got 2 points Tano bet. You can't get even money red, so that would be giving money away.
I get the Rebels elsewhere, 12 to 10.
Okay, so you guys, we can clarify that after the show.
Your friends, you said you wanted to lose weight before you cut your hair. Do you realize that if you do cut your hair, you actually lose weight at the same time?
Well, at the moment, I think I could lose about 400 grams. So, yeah, I'm waiting till I get within range, and then I think I'll snip it off. But, yeah, it's pretty bushy. You see me first thing in the morning. So, Brendan has confirmed that he's happy with that bet as well. And, Gav, let me stick to the blooming Australian games with you. I don't know. I'm a sucker for punishment. I'm going to go Waratahs -8.5. How's that for an even 500? You can have
8 Tano bet.
8 Tano bet. Thank you very much, Oracle. So we got that right, boys. Let's get into the best bets now. Gav, what is your best bet? I'm guessing it's going to be the Force.
No, the Rebels is my best bet. Definitely.
Sorry.
Yeah, and yeah, I think you can probably get 12 to 10, and if the money keeps coming for the Reds, you might even get 13 to 10 or 14 to 10 there. I mean, it can get very big. The money will move this price.
Okay, so your best bet there is the Rebels. And Neil, your best bet?
No, Brent, I'm going to oppose the Oracle. My best bet's definitely Reds. What was Reds on the board at evens, but I'm still quite happy to take Reds on the minus here. I think that's an absolute cracker.
Right, so it's Reds against Rebels there. So we've got Oracle. My best bet at this point, I was actually leaning Blues. Certainly, I like the Blues quite strongly against the Crusaders. I did see the comment that if there are no crowds in Dunedin, then the Hurricanes could be coming right back into it as well. But yeah, I'm gonna take a bit of a watching brief, think about it with the newsletter, and we'll come out tomorrow morning with that one. But thanks to all the guys who watch live. Let's see if any final comments here. Ben's is pointing out Rebels are 13 to 10 to win the game at World Sports Betting, and Chris saying we need to employ an accountant to keep track of these bets, and it certainly is getting to be the case. But Gavin, first of all, to you, thanks very much. Enjoy the first weekend of European rugby, and look forward to your thoughts on Twitter and on the forum.
Yeah, Brent, thanks. I'll try to keep the viewers updated and try to give a couple of posts on the forum if I see any value operating. I know that the team news, just a last comment, the team news generally does come at about 1 o'clock South African time tomorrow. And there's usually a lot of line movements after that gets announced. So just be aware of that. So you can still sort of get a couple of nice prices after team gets announced. That's definitely something I'll be looking out for.
Excellent. And just actually, before I forget, I almost forgot, I got a couple of videos sent to me. Unfortunately, the Stig, I couldn't get his ones across. I don't know if it was the format or what. I was only tried 10 minutes before the show, unfortunately, but I got one from Son of a Punt. But the betting Stig is also going to look at a way of coming on the show in the future and share some of his plays. But for those of you still watching live or watching the recording, here's Son of a Punt.
Evening, everyone. Jordan from Son of a Punt here. Been tough betting weekend for the last couple, but we're excited that the championship is here and we're ready to get back onto a roll. At the moment, we've taken Waratah's Force under 52.5 points, but that line has shifted. So I think our best bet at the moment is Sail Sharks minus 4.5 against the Quins. All the best.
Excellent. So that was the best bet there. Gavin, just to say cheers to you then. Thanks very much for joining us. You got any other videos planned this week? We must maybe plan in the next week a bit of a trivia one again.
Yeah, no, nothing until the end of the month, Brent. I'm quite snowed under at work, and I'm just putting everything together. I'm putting a proper plan into place. So from the end of the month, I'll get going. I've got a question for Neil here with regards to this English rugby. Obviously, the lockdown has had the teams not training or being prepared as they would have normally done. and no crowds being in place. Have you noticed anything else with regards to the preparation of the tournament coming back? I don't know, just almost a general question. Have you just because I'm really I'm going to watch this weekend. Not going to have any bets. I might have one or two of the bets that you've suggested, but I'm going to try and get into this English rugby. But yeah, I'm just interested to know if you noticed anything just from maybe from a social aspect or from a just preparation or anything that stood out.
No, Gav, just interesting comment that you made there. I think one notable statement to make is that all the transfers that were expected to happen in the off-season have come into play mid-season now. So, for instance, all the Sarries loan players who have left Sarries because of their relegation to the championship, they will be allowed to play for their new clubs. So, for instance, you've got Ezekiel at the Saints, you've got Ben Earl, who's just newly capped for England, playing for the Bears, and Max Mullins playing for the Bears, just for a couple of examples. So I think that is a very significant mid-season sort of anomaly that the English Premiership is facing. And one thing about the Premiership, especially in European rugby, that the crowd is a huge component of it. It is definitely a 16th man. So when the sort of you can get nice pluses on the home side previously with the crowd, that's something I'll definitely be looking at. But it is obviously more neutral now. So I expect a couple more minuses to maybe flow in.
Okay, and another question I've got, Neil, is are they playing the full season? I know they've come back and they've obviously had 4 or so months of no games. Are they actually playing the full season?
So they were actually quite close to the completion of the season. So they are finishing the season. And there is still the European Champions Cup and Challenge Cup still to get played out. So they are trying to get those completed, yeah.
So are they going to have more of a busy schedule going into the next 2 months, or is it as it was before, just finishing later?
So generally with the European rugby is that the European games can get played midweek, whereas the Premiership is strictly on the weekend, so it will still be like that. So the Premiership games will only get played on the weekend.
Okay.
But one thing is to note that the Premiership hasn't really run this deep, and obviously the conditions are slightly nicer in England. It is sort of coming to the end of their summer, so we could get a slightly potentially higher scoring game. So that is something to look out for.
It's certainly something that I've always done. Sorry, Carol.
Sorry, the time of year that they would have started the next season.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Yeah. You're right there, Gav.
Because that's exactly what's happened to me in past seasons with the Northern Hemisphere rugby. I've been, especially, I used to be very much more of an overs player than an unders player. So I was going overs, and things were going pretty well. And then I failed to adapt to the changing weather conditions. And you get like mid-December, you're going overs. You see a quote of 38.5, and you think, my word, I've got to get on overs here. And I mean, there's 24 points in the game, that type of thing. There's some lessons to be learned. And I think, Gavin, you got the right idea. Maybe take, a watching brief early. If you're not, I mean, like Neil's done his homework, by all means get involved or follow him. But otherwise, watch the early stages and see how it goes. And the other interesting thing is, I guess, there's not going to be a big gap between the end of one season and the start of the other. And, just no surprise to see Henrik popping in and saying he loves December Northern Hemisphere rugby because he's an unders player of note. Anything else for you, gentlemen? Any other bets this weekend? There's going to be great cycling in France and also in Italy. So, watch the Good for the Game forum for that. We'll get some cycling bets.
Yeah, sorry, there's one other thing. I don't know if you guys noticed, but ESPN is back on DSTV now, and I was watching some baseball last night. So, there's also a little bit, if there's nothing else to go, some of those games is a bit of value as well if you can find them. I know Sean Nicholas is pretty good with his American sports. So, that's also something you've got to look at too.
Excellent, guys. Thanks very much, Gavin. Thanks, Neil. And thanks to all the guys as usually make the show in the live chat. Always good having that. Of course, we had a couple of bets take place this week as well. Thanks, everyone. And if you haven't subscribed to our show yet, do go down below and do that. And you can also link into the free Good for the Game newsletter. See you next week.